I've just received another video of a heli-based incident from a beginner. Another one added to the long list of people who thought this was a safer alternative to wingsuit base jumping. And I would like to explain why, in my opinion, this is a common misconception. But first, let's talk about that word, heli-base. People have been regrouping under that term all jumps performed out of a helicopter with a base rig. The etymology makes no sense since base is an acronym that regroups all type of fixed objects. Heli base is like saying you're heli building or heli antennaing. It makes absolutely zero sense. For that video, I will be dropping the word heli base and instead I'm going to be talking about heli lines because my concern is directed towards terrain flying lines that are performed after jumping from an aircraft, which appears to be a helicopter in most cases. But David, what's your problem with heli lines? Why are you always against everything? I'm glad you asked. I do not have a problem with heli lines per se. I actually love them myself. I have thrown myself countless times out of a helicopter with a base rig and I freaking love it. It gives the opportunity to approach lines that would not be doable out of a mountain. I love the machine itself. I think I enjoyed the heli ride up as much as I love the flight down. I love absolutely everything about it. My concern is to see it open, normalized and advertised to beginner jumpers because it's not as safe as they think it is. And the problem is that some experienced jumpers are marketing it as a safe way to proximity fly. It's now a service that is offered. Go jump in the mountains with zero experience and a 1 hour briefing. Usually the organizer comes with a semi-rational justification of why it's safe to do it his way. Later in that video I will share with you some of the justifications I heard, but for now I would just like to share with you my point of view on heli lines without talking about the beginner aspect yet. I will talk about why I think it's dangerous. We will see technical reasons, but also the human factors. And then I will talk about what incidents have already happened. Then it will be up to each of you to draw conclusions. So why is it dangerous? I would like to do a comparison between wingsuit base jumping and heli lines. And again, I am not talking about the beginner aspect yet. I just want to compare the risk between those two practices for the average wingsuit base jumper. First, we need to agree on the initial assumption that terrain flying is dangerous. If you don't agree with me, go read the base fatality list and decide if you want to watch the rest of the video. For those who are still on the video, terrain flying is dangerous. No matter how hard we try to rationalize it to justify what we're doing, every year prolific skydivers and talented base jumpers die flying their wingsuits in the mountain. We can divide a wingsuit-based proximity flight in 4 sections: the exit, the flight, the deployment, and the canopy ride. Each section has deadly risks associated to it. When you jump with a single canopy system out of a helicopter, you are removing the risk of the exit, but you are still taking the risk of the flight, of the deployment, and of the canopy ride. Let's use numbers to see how much safer that makes it. I pulled the statistics of 254 wingsuit-based fatalities since 2002. We have 56 impacts at the exit, 152 flight-related fatalities, 42 deployment-related fatalities, and 4 canopy-related fatalities, object strikes. 56 impacts at the exit. Out of 254 fatalities, the exit represents 22% of fatalities. When you throw yourself out of a helicopter to perform proximity flights, you remove risk associated to the exit, but you are still facing 80% of the problem, which means that on a statistical aspect only, heli lines are not much safer than wingsuit base jumping. And I will push it even further and defend the idea that on certain aspects, it's even trickier than base jumping. In base jumping, when I approach a line, one thing I can rely on is the consistency of my approach to the terrain. I jump always from the same point. I use visual markers that stay the same and on which I rely to approach my line and make decisions. The speed and angle at which I approach my markers are very consistent and I have the possibility to repeat the same jump many times. When you jump from a heli, sometimes you're dropped a little higher, sometimes a bit lower, sometimes a bit behind, sometimes a bit more in front, and this makes the reading of the terrain and the angle of your approach very different. Approaching an object at a comfortable angle is not the same experience as approaching it with a mandatory high glide or approaching it on a very steep dive and a banking turn. All those inconsistencies force you to improvise in an environment where any wrong decision is a death sentence. The problem of the heli jump is also that it disconnects you from your environment. For example, you cannot assess aerological conditions the same way that when you're standing at the exit, watching the line after hiking up the mountain the last couple hours. And finally, it doesn't allow you to jump on your own timing. You know that moment that you take for yourself before base jump? That deep breath that helps you lock in? The moment of silence to get in focus, to enter the flow state? You don't have it. You're in a noisy environment, and when the door opens, it's go, 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 go. Jumping from an aircraft adds extra pressure, and you need the experience and the mental preparation to manage that pressure while performing technical terrain flying. So, are heli lines much safer than wingsuit base jumping? Of course, you are getting rid of the difficulty of exiting from a cliff, but you are still facing all the risk of wingsuit terrain flying, which are responsible of 80% of fatalities, to which you add extra stress, less aerological information, and more variables in your approach of the terrain. Everything I describe here is something you can hear in the Exit Point podcast where they interviewed Taz. Taz had the chance to survive after impacting the mountain with no parachute out, and I would like you guys to listen to some of the things she says.
Heli lines are their own thing. I have a feeling that a lot of people assume they're easier. And I have to say I highly disagree with that statement.
Do tell.
A base jump. Okay, so let's say you know what you're doing. You can feel the conditions. You've done the hike. During that hike, you might even have had the privilege to observe the line during the whole hike, or hike through part of the line, or feel the weather, all of this. And then when you exit, there's pretty much one way to go. Helis. Helis involved now another category of people. It's now, you can't just be jumpers, you also need pilots. Having another person who doesn't necessarily understand what we do. And we don't necessarily understand what they do. And there's the spot. Let's spot the line. The line is steep. Where do I want to enter it? Where should I be to enter it at the speed and the angle I'd like to enter it at? All of that. All under level of navigation now.
And this is something that I haven't mentioned, but having done many heli lines, I have had pilots that knew exactly where to drop us, and I had pilots who were completely unaware of our problematics. I remember one day where I was in a onesie and the guy stabilized the helicopter about 150 meters above the mountain peak and say, yeah, you're good to go. And I looked over and say, absolutely not. This is not going to work. On a heli jump, you have the responsibility of the drop, which you need to add to all the other things you need to think about.
Everyone there, my boyfriend Plummer, thousands of jumps, so are the other one. We're talking like they've been doing that stuff for way longer than I have. And they know all aspects of the sport really well.
So we've got an elite wingsuiter being shepherded by professional grade wingsuiters and pilots doing a heli line impromptu, but having already gone through most of the research.
Mistakes happen to elite jumpers. I know who was in that helicopter, and 99% of us have less experience than the people who make the mistake that day.
We have a 25 miles per hour headwind.
Oof.
Would I base jumping that shit? No, I wouldn't. But heli jump, it's so much safer.
As I said before, disconnection from the local aerology combined with complacency because you assume that heli lines are safer.
So I'm like, why are you worrying? None of this matter. You just went so hard. You're so goddamn strong. What could possibly... You're going to jump out of an helicopter. You've done this hundreds of times now. It's chill. this is a walk in the park. What could possibly go wrong? I found out later that at least one person there, which happened to be the person I follow, actually did not feel it either and did not love the succession of changes. What am I doing here? I think is the first thing that crossed my mind. And why am I here? This is not where I want to be. But here we go. Hey, cheer up. Don't be a party pooper. Get your shit together. Everyone is in the helicopter and we're about to go and it's showtime and it's good. It's all good. Let's go. I'm not liking this. And this is when I turn to Plumber and I look at him and I gave him an X with my arm because I don't want to go. I don't think we should go. I think none of this is right and I don't want to go anymore. And it looked turbulent, but they did good and everything looked good and it was fine. And so I'm like reconsidering my desire to bail and my ex because I just watched someone go and it's fine, and am I being dramatic or weird or complicated, and why am I feeling this way, and everyone else seems okay and no one's saying shit, and okay, let's go.
That's also a psychological problematic inherent to heli jumps. Those machines are very expensive to fly and the opportunities to get on them don't happen every day. So when the opportunity appears, you are less likely to go down if you don't feel the jump, and you are very likely to go as hard as you can to make the most of that unique opportunity. This last thing is believed to be the reason that led to a fatality on which I will comment later, but for now let's keep listening to Taz.
What I'm not aware of, the whole time he knew that the spot wasn't ideal.
The spot, meaning
trying...
where you got out of a helicopter above the mountain.
Yeah, we were short. We were nowhere near our A or B line, like nowhere near it.
Again, the responsibility of the job adds up to all the other things you need to deal with. And if you do it wrong, if you do it slightly different, it changes the entire jump. Now, I would like to hear one last thing of Taz's story before moving on.
And words for words, that went through my head. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm going in. That was it.
That is a horrible feeling. I've had once in base jumping the I'm going in feeling. And I'm not talking about the it's going wrong, it's scary feeling, but the absolute certainty that I was going to die. And it sucked. We like to joke about it to cop out. Certain people romanticize it, but the reality is that I have never felt more alone in my life than on these moments. And the purpose of that video and of everything I do in base is to maximize the amount of fun while minimizing the risk to ever feel that again. Anyway, I'm not gonna repost the whole podcast here, but I definitely recommend listening to it because it contains the information about heli lines, but also the human factors associated to it. I will put a link in the description. But Taz is not the only experienced flyer that got caught into the traps of heli lines. In 2013, there was an event called Heli Base 74. 23 of the most famous proximity flyers reunited for 3 days of heli jumps. Beginning of the first day, fatality. And everyone wondering how can this happen if this event is reuniting the most prolific jumpers in the world. For the purpose of this video, I talked to Espen Fadnes, who organized the event at the time, and the assumption is that Mark Sutton went very hard on his first jump because he was going to be on camera flying duty for the rest of the event. And this was his only fun jump. It goes back to what I said earlier. Rare opportunity, high price. When doing a heli line, people are tempted to fly way harder than on their normal base jumps. This event happened in August 2013, and just a few months later, March 2014, 3 of the most prolific base jumpers at the time exit the heli, get confused, enter the wrong line, which results in the 3 of them impacting in the terrain and dying. The assumption is that the leader got lost and the 2 others followed blindly, which resulted in absolute tragedy. And it's interesting to note that 2 of those jumpers were at the Heli Base event a few months earlier. A few days prior to this accident, I met one of them, Ludo. Ludo was at the time the most incredible wingsuit base camera flyer, the guy that always got the shot. And I had met him a couple of times before, but you have to imagine that I'm 2 years in the sport, so I'm stuck to talk to this guy. And we went for a coffee together, and he told me that he was questioning the sport because recently he had filmed someone going in while doing air-to-air camera flying. And I clearly remember him telling me just before leaving that he was not really keen to base jump, that he was going to go to Switzerland to make some chill heli jumps instead, way safer. And a few years later, I was supposed to meet Taz in France to do some acro jumps together, and then she sends me a message telling me that she was cancelling our plans because she needed to go back to the US. She felt that she was going way too hard because something had happened, and she needed to take a step back if she wanted to stay alive. So she flew back to the US, and 2 weeks later, she went for a chill heli jump. We underestimate the difficulty of heli lines, and we are complacent. And I could speak endlessly about experts falling in the same trap. Red Bull athlete Ellie Thompson died on a heli line. Pascal Gisler, Swiss base jumping legend, the guy opened a shitload of exit in high mountaineering technical environment, and he died flying terrain after exiting from the aircraft, which he had done countless times. German guy in Wallenstadt not so long ago. The guy is sessioning the normal base jumping exit points, gets the opportunity to go in a heli, and he dies approaching the same line he was doing base jumping. I've witnessed with my own eyes a friend emergency pulling on a demo jump, and 2 years later I saw again with my own eyes two legends of the sport doing the exact same mistake at the exact same place. If you compare the amount of close calls that are happening to the number of jumps that are performed, this is definitely not the super safe alternative to base jumping that people are trying to market. Now you will think that given the accidentology amongst experienced flyers, the experts of our discipline will not have the genius idea to offer terrain flying guidance and heli jumps to total beginners. Hold my beer! For a long time, heli jumps were hard to organize, and people assumed that it was something reserved to elite sponsored athletes. I think it was around 2020, 2021 when I started seeing people sharing videos of flying along the ridge of the Eiger, and word came around that it was very easy to organize, and news spread like wildfire. The Lauterbrunnen base jump Facebook group got so flooded with people trying to organize heli rides that they had to create a separate Facebook group dedicated to heli rides. And so the carnage begins. Low experience, no guidance people simply purchasing heli tickets to go fly the same line they saw on Instagram. With zero understanding of mountain aerology, no knowledge about energy management, no experience on terrain flying decision making, freshly arrived Americans doing a carnage XLW jump along the ridge of the Eiger, without forgetting the very mediatic CEO who went in terrain flying on that same line with not much base jumping experience. People arriving to my first jump course, having tried their base rig for the first time, doing a terrain line from the same heli on this exact same line. But my all-time favorite, the Lords organized to proximity fly with skydive rigs. For skydivers by a skydiver. With the clients posting on a Facebook forum that it was way safer to proximity fly when you had a second chance because you have 2 parachutes. And we tried to approach him to explain very nicely why it was dangerous, and we got insulted and blocked. The post was removed in the meantime, but a separate discussion is still on there, and I remember him arguing that 40 meters off the ground with a skydive rig was not more dangerous than 10 meters off the ground with base rig, and pointing out that the person who organized the Lords was a very experienced and knowledgeable skydiver, so it was all fine, and I don't have the energy. Guys, skydiving and base jumping, terrain flying are very different activities, and an elite skydiver is not necessarily a good terrain flyer, the same way that some base jumpers are very bad skydivers. I mean, no, most of us are really shit skydivers. We can fly our bodies, you know, and let's try to separate. If you're a ninja in one discipline, this just talk to the people of the discipline. Don't bring experts from the other discipline to do stupid stuff in the, you know, I mean, am I clear? I'm sorry, it's not the most eloquent I have been, but it's, I'm, as we say in French, les bras m'en tombent, you know, I am baffled, I'm stunned. I don't have the whole vocabulary in English, but I think you understand the feeling I'm trying to express here. But let's not blame skydivers for a problem that also, and I will say mainly, comes from our own community. You have more and more base jumpers trying to make money by selling heli lines, or simply trying to fill up the helicopter to organize a rotation for themselves. And when it's done for clients that have the appropriate experience, I'm all for it. It's perfect. You have on one end one guy that did the homework, on the other end you have the guy that has the knowledge. One deserves to have fun, the other one deserves the money. It's a perfect match. Just go for it and have a blast. But this is not where the money is for the coaches, because experienced flyers that have done the homework to arrive at this level, they already know how to organize the helicopter. The ones who need help are the ones with no experience, no knowledge of this environment, high-profile skydiver with zero base jumping experience, or beginner base jumpers. On one end, you have a person that is willing to take a shortcut to do something that will normally require years of training and experience, and this person is ready to listen to whatever explanation to justify what he wants to do. And on the other end, you have the person that is ready to provide this justification in exchange for money. This is a match made in hell. This is your friend out of rehab going straight to Burning Man with a stripper. You already know what's gonna happen. The coach is telling the student, and often himself, that this is safer than a base jump. And in some cases, more and more, he offers to lead the jump. Because the average student is always good at following, right? And we all know that experienced flyers never make a mistake while leading a jump. Guys, here is a list of people that I will blindly follow while doing a terrain line. Moving on. Guys, doing heli lines requires to be a very good terrain flyer who knows energy management, with an expert eye, capable of doing very fast decisions in a deadly environment. Following someone in this configuration requires to be as good, if not better, because you need to be able to chase at high speed, high performance, anticipate trajectories. There is no shortcut to terrain flying. Remember the stats I mentioned earlier, 60% of fatalities happen in flight. And remember the stories I told earlier, Dan, Ludo, Brian, they died because two expert flyers followed blindly in the terrain, one expert flyer that made a mistake. And Taz, she's an expert flyer who followed another expert flyer without noticing that the spot was wrong.
As long as you're on him, everything is going to be perfect. Have a good exit right on him, just stick with him, and it's gonna be a good time. What do you have to do? Stare at the leader, come back to him. Easy. So what do I do after the wake? Do I ever look where I am? Nope. Never have a look. When I finally look ahead of me and pay attention to where I was, and realize it was too late for, like, literally only one thought crossed my mind, and words for words that went through my head. I was like, oh fuck, I'm going in. That was it.
I know coaches that are trying to do good and that keep the lines very high, very safe, very scenic. I've seen some really reasonable flying, and I do appreciate the effort. But at the end of the flight, you always see the same thing. People that pull too low because they have no understanding of the visual, that are very slow to unzip the wingsuit, that can't manage their line twist, people that are simply not prepared yet for that environment. And they don't know it because they've put their trust in you, the expert, and you told them that it was okay. And some coaches do it because of greed, others, I think the majority just don't remember what it is to be a beginner, and they stay hung up on this cognitive bias that it's just a heli jump. Heli lines are super fun. I love to do them, and I will keep doing them as much as I get the opportunity to do so. But if we want to keep enjoying them, we must start giving them the respect they deserve. And we have to stop prioritizing our personal interest over our duty as experienced flyer, which is to keep the beginners on a safe path.
Il est beaucoup trop beau pour un base jumper. Je trouve pas qu'il est beau.
Bah, moi, tout ce que je sais, c'est qu'il a fait de la chirurgie reconstructrice et qu'il a demandé à ressembler à Vince Ruffet.
Ouais. Oh putain, c'est vrai! Il a la gueule de Vince! Mets un casque Red Bull et tu fais ouais man! Ouais man! Ouais, merci.
Franchement, je préfère.
Ouais les gars! Trop